This Zoom is something else.
It really is. Hello, Westminster. My name is Boyd Taylor, and I'm here to talk about the Resident Association's new venture, the Westminster Writers Journal, and visit with one of its contributors. The Writers Journal is a platform for creative expression, poetry, nonfiction, memoirs, fiction by Westminster residents, and the inaugural edition will be available around May 11th. 33 Westminster residents have contributed to this inaugural edition, and my guest today is one of them, Ken Koock.
Carol.
Hello, Ken. How are you doing?
Great. How are you doing today, Boyd?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Congratulations on getting that journal put together.
Well, I think everybody's going to be happy with it. I certainly hope so. We had a lot of people working on it, I'll tell you, plus 33 contributors.
That's quite a formidable achievement.
Well, we're getting going. I hope we can do it twice a year. We'll see. I think there's that much talent here. So how are you?
Yeah.
How are you and Carol doing?
We're doing pretty well for old people.
We decided
we're doing quite well, as a matter of fact.
We decided we're lucky to be here. We got a great staff looking after us, and it's really good to know that we don't have to go out and face the crowd in the grocery store. And
you're right.
Yeah.
And they've done a remarkable job, I think, when you look at some of the retirement homes and nursing homes and care facilities don't have near the record that Westminster has.
Well, that's certainly true, and so we're fortunate every day. But I wanted to start off by thanking you and Carol for staging the Westminster Got Talent show last fall. Is there going to be a second show?
Carol rehearsed on the piano just a few days ago, and of course there's no audience possibility right now. But we talked to Jerry, who recorded the last show, and if we can talk Carol into doing a few numbers and then record them and then show them on 1890, the Westminster station, I think it could be a possibility, and she is working on it right now.
Well, if she's working on it, it's going to happen. She's a doer. So,
can you listen to me in case I screw up? Make sure I screw up.
We'll give you approval of the recording. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's that at least everybody could see it on DVD without being exposed to each other.
Yeah, that's right. So, how did you and Carol happen to come to Westminster?
Well, we had heard a lot about it. As a matter of fact, we were in a singing group. In the singing group, Carol was, of course, the pianist. It was called the Getting Better All the Time Singers. And it was headed by Liz Carpenter and Colleen and Dick Harden and a lot of wonderful people. And so we had been here a number of times as performers. And as we got older, we decided that we probably need a place like this. And we checked Corinthia. We checked also the Longhorn place out west. And this was by far seemed to be the leading candidate for what we wanted.
Well, how long have you been here now?
How long, Carol? 3 years?
Yes.
3 years.
So.
But we had an apartment here for a long time before we actually moved in. We were living in Colorado.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, you made a great, you're a great addition to the family here. We are really glad that you made that choice.
Thank you.
Looking back on your career, I guess you kind of went into the family business, didn't you? Owning and operating green pastures.
Yes. I kind of backed into it, Boyd. The reason is I was in law school and I was working part-time at Green Pastures. I was married, had a kid, and there was a tremendous fire. And my parents were living upstairs at the time. All the kids had moved away by then, and the restaurant was really booming. But the fire was a big he took a big hit in the old house, and it came from my mother loved rip snorting fires in the fireplace, of which there were 12, and an ember got on the shingle roof, which was wood, and a huge norther came in on that blustery March day and caught the roof on fire.
Mm.
And so my parents left and said, you got to come get this thing going again. We just had it. And they were, they'd spent quite a bit of time there already. So I left law school and went in, and we got it rebuilt and kept it going. And then I bought the restaurant along with a partner from my parents, and the rest is history.
Well, Green Pastures had a history before and also a wonderful history after. Anybody who's lived in Austin for any length of time knows about Green Pastures. So how the family story, how did they happen to start Green Pastures?
Well, it came because of the demand after World War II. After World War II was over, there were, well, you have to remember first that my mother is quite a party person. She loved entertaining. She loved wonderful food, and she was quite a raconteur. And so after World War II, there were a lot of soldiers that came back. They wanted to get married. They wanted to have rehearsal dinners. They wanted to have bridal showers. And there was no place. So my mother decided to open up some of the downstairs for that purpose, for special parties. And that morphed into serving 2 days a week to the public in those two front rooms, as well as on the porch where they had tables set on the porch. And then that morphed into a little even more dining and adding on in the kitchen, which was just a family kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So they added on a big room called the cotillion room, a big kitchen, a big sun porch, and then it became just more and more popular, and the demand was greater and greater, so they had to expand. She was quite successful.
Yes, yes, it really was. When did the Peacocks come?
The Peacocks came in the early, I'm going to say 60s or mid 60s. We had a wonderful client, customer, who we used to do a lot of parties for. They'd owned the ranch where the Westminster, not Westminster, where Westinghouse is now in Georgetown. Her name was Gladys Pearson. She was a wonderful old Southern lady, very charming and very traditional. And they sold the ranch, and she called me and said, "Mr. Koock, my poor peacocks have lost their home because it's being taken over by Westinghouse. And I wondered if you could come get some of them and put them at Green Pastures where they surely belong." So I said, okay. So it was a little bit bigger of a job than I thought. But I had a couple of guys in the kitchen, and we went up there. And the interesting thing about peacocks is you can walk up slowly behind them until you come to like a wall. In this case, it was a bamboo shrub that was about 8 feet tall. And they would then decide that, I'm going to have to go somewhere, and it's usually straight up. So they started flapping their wings, and when they did, you reached down and grabbed their legs, which they stuck behind them as they went up, wrapped the legs in duct tape, masking tape, and we put them in the truck. There were about 30, but we only caught 10 because they were definitely wild. They were not domesticated.
Yeah.
And we'd always had game in Green Pastures. We had chickens, we had guineas, we had turkeys, we had ducks. And so we had a place for them, and you're supposed to keep them cooked up for 30 days, feed them and water them, and keep them in the coops, and they'll stay there forever. And sure enough, that turned out to be true. So after 30 days, we let them out, and they began to roost in the live oak trees there, which are over at Green Pastures, over 200 live oak trees. So they had a pretty good choice. and then reproduce. And in fact, we had so many, we would give some of the little chicks away to a game farm up in Georgetown, and they still do that, as a matter of fact, because the peacocks are still there.
Yeah, yeah. They're pretty fertile.
Yeah, they'll have about 12. It's very interesting because when they're born, they hatch early in the morning, and they roost in the trees, but they hatch their nests on the ground, usually in a spot that's kind of hidden. And then the first day, by the end of the first day, these little bitty, cutest little chicks you ever saw have to get up under their mother's wings to stay warm. It means they have to be able to clutter up those trees, to clatter up those trees, because they can't fly, and so they have to use their wings and their feet to get up the tree, to get under their mother's wings to stay warm for about 4 or 5 days. And so the ones that don't make it up just don't survive. Most of them do make it up.
Wow.
And but I think that's an interesting phenomenon, that they're hatched early in the morning and they get all day to get their strength up to get up the tree.
That is an amazing story. I didn't know that. We used to they have some peacocks over at the park by Westwood. And
Oh yeah, Laguna Gloria.
Laguna Gloria has some peacocks, yeah. So you've been both a pilot and a sailor. What did you fly?
I flew mainly Cessnas, Cessna Cardinals, retractable gear Cardinals, and also Cessna 210s and all Cessna 182s. I started out in a 172, and when I was a kid, you won't believe this, there were several families living at Green Pastures during World War II. I had 2 aunts that lived there with their kids. The men were all off to war. And then they had one bathroom that had a tub and a shower, a commode, and a sink basin, and a hot water heater, and that was all that was there. And a book on how to fly written in the 20s. And they didn't even have pictures, they just had stick men. So that's where I got introduced to flying. And of the time I had my first lesson when I was 16, the guy said, "Well, you seem to know a lot about it." I said, "Well, I memorized the book in my bathroom."
Well, so did you take lessons out at Ragsdale or where?
Yes, I did later. I got my license when I was actually in the Army at Fort George G. Meade. They had a flying club there.
Uh-huh.
And guess what? It was $6 an hour for the plane. No, $4.50 an hour for the plane and $6 for the instructors. So for $10 an hour, you could get instructions. Can you believe that?
I do not. That is amazing. Yeah, it really is. Have you given up flying?
Oh yeah, I gave it up when I became senile, which was about 10 years ago.
You have a date by which you became senile?
Well, it was about 2005.
Do you still sail?
I do go sailing with a friend. I don't have my boat any longer. I used to sail at Lake Travis, and we used to take my wife and kids every now and then down to the British Virgin Islands, sail down there, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. But it's a wonderful thing to do.
Well, I tried to sail a while, and Kitty decided it was too much work. So
yeah, it is. And I had a friend that I finally convinced him to go sailing, and he said, "That's the stupidest thing in the world." I said, "You go zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. Takes you all day. You can get there in 5 minutes in the speedboat. Just go straight."
Well, you missed the experience. Yeah. No, I love to sail. So I know that you're a baker also. You shared some lemon pie with me one time.
Oh yeah.
You're a sourdough bread baker too, right?
Yes, we. I didn't get to cook in the restaurant much, very, very much. I did fire a chef and got stuck in the kitchen for a year, and they said, "Mr. Koock, we've got to get a chef in here. You're running off more business than we can attract." And and then when I'd go in the kitchen to help, they'd say, "They need you in the dining room, Mr. Koock." So I'd go in the dining room to help, and they say, they need you in the office, Mr. Koock. So then they'd say, Mr. Koock, we don't need you in the office. They need you over at Tres Amigos. So it's a chain we started. So nobody would let me cook. Nobody let me in the restaurant. So finally, I'm able to bake now because my wife says, I'm tired of cooking. So you just have at it. It's here at Westminster. So we got an apartment with a kind of a regular, normal kitchen in it. And so I do sourdough baking and pies and stuff. It's a lot of fun. And finally, I get my dream come true.
I tell you, it may have been a while, but you do a really good job.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for contributing to the inaugural edition of the Writer's Journal. I really enjoyed reading your story. The title is Restaurant Tales, and you must have a million of them.
Yes, there's quite a few.
So would you share some of this story that's in this edition with our viewers?
Certainly. In Restaurant Tales, it's a pretty short article. But what I was trying to say is start with the genesis of Green Pastures, which is named after the 23rd Psalm, of course, because when you drive in, it has kind of a peaceful, verdant, pastoral quality about it. So my parents named it Green Pastures. And they were, even before they had a restaurant, it was a very hospitable place. My grandparents who lived there also, and then my mother and father got it from them. It was kind of an open house. You just showed up and you could eat or you could do whatever you needed to do. It was a pretty much a wide open place. But at the time, of its infancy, I'll just read this few little words here. Of the restaurant known as Green Pastures, our family ate at one end of the kitchen, which served two masters. One, the dining out public, and the other, our family of 9, often with frequent guests. Other kids, home-starved parish priests from St. Ignatius Church, and sometimes other visitors, such as the noted bird expert, Dr. Edgar Kincaid, who was J. Frank Dobie's nephew, who would come in and have supper and lecture us about ornithology. He was so knowledgeable about birds, we all thought deep down inside somewhere, he must actually be a bird. And when he walked, it was just like one of his feathered subjects.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He wrote a brilliant and extensive ornithology. They had trouble reducing the number of words. It was just so complete on North American birds.
He was J. Frank Dobie's nephew?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, he walked just like a bird. Like you go see a stork or a whooping crane. It always reminds me of Dr. Kincaid.
That's funny. Well, J. Frank Dobie didn't have any. He didn't have any children, did he?
No, sir.
Yeah.
This is his brother. I think it's his brother's or sister's son.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I hope that our fall edition will have Restaurant Tales Part 2 or anything else that you might care to share with your neighbors here. So.
Well, it has a wonderful history about it. It's kind of and you know what? They're doing quite well now. This is the owners that bought it from us have invested millions of dollars in restoration and are adding a 90-unit inn on the edge of the property. And the chef who's there came there when, you won't believe this, when he was 9 years old or 10 years old, and his mother is a resident here at Westminster. And she said, you don't remember this, but my son came in and wanted to just work in the restaurant one day, and you let him, and he worked, and he did real good, and he always wanted to be the head chef at Green Pastures, and darn if he's not.
That's an amazing story. That's wonderful. So it's good to hear that it's in good hands.
Yes, it's in real good hands.
That's good to know. Well, thank you so much, and I really appreciate your being here. And we'll be hearing from you some more, and we're looking forward to that next talent show. And so, and to all our viewers, the Writers Journal will be available at the little store around the 11th of May. So watch for it and buy it. It's only $15, $17.50 if you need a large print edition. So buy one, buy several. They'll be great gifts, and you'll be glad that you did. So, and thanks again to Ken Koock for being here today, and thanks to you, all of you out there, for tuning in. Stay well.
And